But I must confess to you, because I'm better than I used to be, I must confess to you that I didn't really understand this quote until I wrote The Power of Intention, until I put together this program here for you. I didn't really fully grasp it. I get it now. I get it. And it's the last line in a poem called Ode on a Grecian Urn. And the couplet goes like this: beauty is truth. See, this is truth. This is the source from which we all emanate. And we leave when we take on an ego. Beauty is truth. Truth, beauty. That is all you know on earth and all you need to know. From one of the greatest poets of his time. Your natural state is beauty, joy, tranquility. I want to experience beauty. And you know, the way to get beauty into your life is to say, I only attract it. And I take the path of least resistance. I take the path of least resistance. What's the path of least resistance? The path that says, I am as closely aligned with this energy as it's possible to be. You know, in 1978, I had a wonderful opportunity, one of the great opportunities of my life. I was invited by an organization called YPO, Young Presidents Organization, to come to Vienna in Austria. It was at the time when erroneous zones and pulling your own strings were topping all the charts, and they invited me to come over and lecture to all these presidents. I was 38 years old and very much in more of an ego mode than I have learned to become in my life. But I was honored to go over there, and I had read a book when I was in college, and I was teaching at a university, and I taught this book. It's called Man's Search for Meaning. And it was written by a man who was a survivor of the Holocaust. His name was Viktor Frankl. And Viktor Frankl decided that he had to survive the Holocaust because he had to tell the story. That was his purpose. We got to Vienna, and I found out that little Wayne Dyer, this little kid who lived in foster homes and worked for everything he ever had in his life, was on the same panel with Viktor Frankl. Man's Search for Meaning. I just sat there in awe. I remember what Rumi once said. He said, sell your cleverness and purchase bewilderment. Just be in a state of bewilderment. And I was just totally in awe to be sitting in the same room, let alone on the same panel, let alone discussing in front of these presidents this, with this man who had everything taken away from him. He was a psychiatrist who was taken off to the concentration camps in Nazi Germany. And he described how he survived. The Nazis gave him a bowl of soup, which was just hot water with even sometimes bugs floating around in it. And there was a dead fish head for flavor in the soup. That was his meal for the day. And he described the beauty. Not the anger, because the anger, and he learned very early that anger and resentment and hatred are low energies that always weaken you. He learned to find beauty in a floating fish head. You've got to be able to find it everywhere. Beauty is truth. Truth, beauty. They are one. Find it in as many places as you can. The next face of intention is what I call the face of expansiveness. And the intention that I have for this is, it is my intention to express the genius that I am. I love that Buckminster Fuller once wrote, everyone is born a genius, but the process of living de-geniuses you. It does. This source is an expanding source. It's a forming power. You have to be a forming power. You have to be in a state of expansion, a state of seeing yourself in the same way that this universal source sees you. You are a genius. Einstein said that imagination is more important than knowledge. More important than knowledge. He also said something very powerful. He said, all I want to do is to learn to think like God thinks. All the rest is details. It's just details. How much time do you spend in your life on the details? This program is about learning to think, feel, and sound like your source, like source energy. So you have to pay attention within you to all of your inner thoughts that have any doubt in them. Hawkins talks about this in Power versus Force, that everyone that is labeled a genius has something called radical humility. They don't brag about it. They don't talk about how great they are. They just know that they came from a source and they came here to do something. And to me, I mean, I have people that show up in my life who think that because I can get up in front of an audience or because I can sit down and write, that this makes me a genius. And, folks, if my car doesn't start, I open up the hood and I'm looking for on, off. Hoping to find a switch in there. That's just, because otherwise I am completely challenged when it comes to fixing things. And I want it that way. I encourage that, all right? I don't want to be spending my energy fixing screen doors, and I've made that really clear. So I just manifest screen door repairers in my life. The way that you stay with this field of expansion is that you align with the spiritual energy that is really the genius from which you originated. You are a genius. One of the most important things that you can do is look for the genius in others. See it in everyone, in everything that they do, and remind them of that. I have 8 children. Every single one of them is a genius in their own way. Every one of them. One of my daughters is, who you'll be hearing in a few moments, is a genius when it comes to taking the microphone and singing. One of my daughters has such power in her ability to get on a horse and to take little children and to show them how to ride a horse. And she looks with her long, flowing blonde hair when she's out there, and she takes these little children, and she just touches my heart, and it's so powerful. And she knows that this is her purpose. Her purpose has something to do. She can't ever stop thinking about anything that doesn't have something to do with horses. Every paper she ever had to write in school has something to do with that. She's her own little genius. I have a son who is who's a surfer, and who's also made up his own language. He speaks a language that he and a few of his friends can do. And I have a brother, my brother David is the same way. He created a language when we were 13 and 14 years old, and I still speak it today. And nobody else understands anything about it whatsoever. If I say Clodopole, Dyer or the Beatty Banal, only my kids will know what I'm talking about. There's not a person in the whole country. My brother Dave watching this, he'll know what I'm talking about. That's a genius. All of my children have this in one form or another. And each and every one of you have that as well. Don't let life de-genius you. You came from a source that creates perfection.